Day 68 of the collapse. Garrett Knox was standing at my front gate with a shotgun. Behind him, 3 men from what used to be our town were loading gasoline cans into the back of a pickup truck. They thought my parents and I were trapped inside the house. They thought we were scared. They thought we were starving. They had no idea we were watching them from 30 feet underground, inside a reinforced storm bunker stocked with 6 months of food, water, fuel, and ammunition. I had already died once. I wasn't going to die again. Last time the apocalypse came, I starved to death. Not in some dramatic last stand. Not fighting zombies. Not bleeding out in the streets. I died alone in my apartment because I didn't have enough food. 15 days after the outbreak, my body simply shut down. The alarm went off at 8 a.m. I bolted upright. The ceiling above me, same faint crack running across the plaster. Same cheap rental apartment. Same morning light leaking through half-broken blinds. My hand shot to my phone. June 2nd, 2025. Monday, 8 a.m. My breath stopped. Memories flooded back in violent waves. Sirens, screaming, emergency alerts, the smell of rot drifting through the hallway of my apartment building. The sound of someone pounding on my door 3 days before I died. This wasn't a dream. My heart started racing so hard it hurt. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt. I had died. And somehow, I was back. Reborn 1 month before the world ended. If I had been given a second chance, I wasn't wasting it. This time, I would prepare. This time, I would stockpile enough to outlast hell itself. And this time, my parents, Daniel Bishop and Irene Bishop, were going to survive with me. Looking back, the signs had been there. Earlier that year, a massive earthquake leveled a small country in the southern hemisphere. Weeks later, violent dust storms tore across parts of Asia and Eastern Europe. Then, news outlets started whispering about a statistically impossible tsunami threat near a Pacific island nation. People laughed it off. The markets didn't even dip. Until 1 month later, the virus hit. Not a flu. Not rabies. Something worse. The first infected were filmed biting paramedics. Within days, cities fell into chaos. Within a week, supply chains collapsed. By the time people realized those unrelated disasters were warning shots, it was already too late. I got out of bed immediately. Showered. Dressed. No hesitation. By 10:30 a.m. I was sitting across from my manager. He didn't want me to resign. Until I placed a flash drive on the desk. Inside, it was proof of his tax fraud. Years of it. He stared at me. I stared back. Cold. Calm. He signed the paperwork. I walked out free. By noon, I was back at my apartment packing everything I owned. I terminated the lease. Sold what I could online. Dumped the rest. Then I booked the earliest flight to Kansas, back to my parents' farm. While waiting at the gate, I opened my banking app. Savings, $8,147. Pathetic. Last life, I had thought that was safe. This time, I knew better. I applied for every available credit line and personal loan I qualified for. Within hours, my accessible funds climbed to just under $15,000. Still not enough, but survivable. For a moment, I considered underground lenders. High-interest cash advances, Then I stopped. Last time, I only survived 15 days. I had no idea how long the apocalypse would last. If civilization somehow recovered and I crawled out alive only to drown in debt? No. I was preparing for survival, not financial suicide. Before boarding, I called home.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I'm coming back for a while. Just need a break.
Daniel Bishop didn't ask many questions. Irene Bishop sounded relieved. They both knew city life had been grinding me down. They had no idea the real storm was coming. I was their only child. And this time, I was bringing the warning. My parents owned a modest farm outside a small Midwestern town. An orchard. A few acres of vegetables. Some storage barns. A storm cellar that hadn't been used seriously in years. They weren't wealthy, but they were self-sufficient. And that made them dangerous in a world about to collapse. Every time I visited, they dropped everything just to spend time with me. Which meant one thing. If I got there now, they wouldn't be traveling when the outbreak began. They'd be home. With me. Where I could protect them. After landing, I rented a pickup and drove straight toward town. Before Daniel arrived to pick me up, I walked the streets casually, scanning everything. Hardware store. Agricultural supply warehouse. Feed supplier. Bulk grocery outlet. Pharmacy. I memorized locations like I was mapping a battlefield. Because I was. Then I started buying. Reinforced steel brackets. Industrial screws. Heavy-duty hinges. High-gauge fencing wire. Concrete patch kits. Motion lights. When my father pulled up in his work truck and saw the piles stacked near the checkout counter, his eyebrows shot up.
Lauren, what exactly are you building?
Dad,
I said evenly.
I'll explain at home. Just trust me.
He studied my face. Something in my eyes must have convinced him. He didn't argue. Good thing he brought the truck. We barely fit everything in the bed. When we pulled into the driveway, my mom stepped out onto the porch. She froze at the sight of the cargo. I stepped out, walked up to them, and looked them both in the eye.
Dad. Mom. What I'm about to tell you is gonna sound insane. But it's true. And you need to believe me.
Then I told them everything. About the outbreak. About the collapse. About starving alone in my apartment, trying to call them while the networks were already dead. About dying without ever hearing their voices again. Daniel Bishop didn't interrupt. Irene Bishop's eyes slowly filled with tears. They saw I wasn't joking. I had never lied to them in my life. After a long silence, my mother asked softly,
"What do we do?"
I didn't hesitate.
We fortify the house. Then we stockpile enough supplies to survive long term. Food, water, medicine, power.
My father nodded once. Years ago, he had worked construction. Structural reinforcement was second nature to him.
If we've got a month,
He said,
we use every day.
we made a plan. First, fortify. Then, acquire. No wasted motion. No panic. After dinner, they told me to rest. But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my old apartment hallway, dark, silent, abandoned. I saw the empty pantry shelves. I felt the hunger again. That weakness, that helplessness. I clenched my fists in the dark. This time, I wasn't going to be weak. I had 30 days. And I was going to turn the Bishop farm into a fortress. The next morning, we started fortifying the house. Not patching. Not renovating. Fortifying. Daniel Bishop moved like a man 20 years younger, tools steady in his hands, measuring twice, drilling once. He didn't waste motion. He didn't waste time. Irene Bishop and I carried lumber, steel plates, reinforced hinges, boxes of anchors. Every nail that sank into wood felt like another second of life secured. We started with the doors and windows. Reinforced steel cores. Triple hinge locking systems. Impact bars across the interior frames. While my father worked the power tools, I calculated angles and pressure points in my head. Entry points. Weak spots. Blind zones. Then we moved to the perimeter. We raised the outer wall higher. Thicker. Harder to scale. My father embedded shattered glass along the top layer of cement and ran barbed wire across reinforced brackets. From the road, it looked excessive. To me, it looked necessary. I briefly considered installing an electric fence. Then I remembered the first collapse. Power died within days. An electric fence without electricity is just decoration. Electricity. That was the next problem. Within an hour, I was driving my father's old cargo truck toward the nearest appliance center. I bought high-efficiency solar panels, industrial-grade battery storage units, charge controllers, cables thick enough to survive heat and time. The store owner tried to upsell me on a gasoline generator. I almost said yes. Then I remembered the sound. In my first life, generators were like dinner bells. Noise traveled. The infected followed vibration, and men followed noise. Garrett Knox would have heard it from half a mile away. So I declined. Instead, I bought something that looked almost ridiculous sitting in the back of the truck. A manual power generation bicycle. Quiet. Human-powered. Reliable. At the time, it felt like an afterthought. Later, that machine would save our lives. But that story belongs to another day. When I returned home, the work didn't slow. It intensified. We replaced every exterior door with the highest security grade available. Installed ballistic-resistant glass in every window. Applied one-way privacy film so no one outside could see movement within. My father ordered over a dozen offline micro-surveillance cameras. No cloud connection. No internet dependence. Hardwired. Encrypted. We mounted them along the perimeter walls. On fence posts. Even inside the hollow casing of a nearby streetlight. If someone approached our property, I would see them before they saw us. The monitoring station was placed in the basement, which was about to become something much more important. Yes. We had a basement. It had once stored grain and tools. Now it would become our final line of defense. Transforming it was more complicated than reinforcing doors, so we hired a construction crew from Chong City in the neighboring province. Remote. Mountainous terrain. Long travel distance. By the time the collapse came, even if they remembered our address, even if they realized how strong our house was, they would never make it through infected mountain roads to reach us. When the basement reconstruction was complete, Daniel Bishop lined the walls with industrial soundproofing. Layer after layer. No echo. No leakage. We installed multiple security doors on the stairwell descent, each one reinforced. each one independently lockable. A choke point system. If someone breached one door, they would meet another. And another. We also converted a sealed side room into a waste processing chamber. Ventilation filtered. Odor contained. In the first life, the smell of rot attracted more than flies.
Dad,
I said quietly, watching him inspect the final locking mechanism. You were made for this. He smiled faintly.
I spent years on construction sites.
Daniel Bishop said,
Safety's not a suggestion. It's survival.
the basement entrance was concealed beneath reinforced floor panels. Without schematics, it was nearly impossible to detect. By the time we completed the structural upgrades, it was June 27th, 7 days before collapse. During construction, my mother and I didn't waste a single afternoon. We made sausages, cured meats, vacuum sealed and hung in controlled storage. High protein, long shelf life. Every few days, I drove into town and rotated purchases between different wholesale suppliers. Bottled water, barrel water. No single store saw the full pattern. I bought instant noodles, self-heating hot pots, compressed biscuits, freeze-dried meals, and shelf-stable snacks. Calories were currency. The final week became aggressive accumulation. We cleared bulk markets of rice, flour, cooking oil, long-lasting root vegetables. My mother selected easy-growth vegetable seeds, hardy varieties that didn't require precision care. The basement slowly filled until it resembled a private warehouse. My father drove to the county center and purchased 2 large commercial freezers. We installed them downstairs. Both were packed with fresh meat. 4 days before collapse, we split up strategically. Multiple pharmacies, different supermarkets, no repeated routes. We stocked antibiotics, fever reducers, anti-inflammatories, antiseptics, bandages, and prescription backups. We purchased sanitary supplies, tissues, thermal packs, heavy winter blankets. Survival wasn't just about bullets. It was about comfort, about stability, about dignity. Large clothing shipments I had ordered earlier arrived in waves. Seasonal layers, durable boots, work gloves, cold weather gear. Then I prepared for morale. Mahjong tiles. Offline ebooks downloaded onto multiple devices. Hard drives filled with movies and television series. In the first life, silence broke people before hunger did. This time, we would not break. We also secured defensive tools. Blades, impact weapons, and 3 drones equipped with high-definition cameras. Eyes in the sky. Because when Bryce Tanner started prowling streets with his petty gang, and when Garrett Knox decided our house looked like a target, I would already know they were coming. And somewhere out there, something worse was changing. In my first life, rumors spread about a mutated infected. Stronger. Smarter. Watching. They called it the Warden. I never saw it. I died too early. This time, if it came near my home, it would find that Lauren Bishop was no longer prey. July 3rd. 2 days before the outbreak fully detonated. I don't remember the exact hour the world collapsed in my first life. It was a Friday. I went to bed early, exhausted from work. When I woke up near noon, civilization was already bleeding out. This time, I refused to be surprised. For safety, our family agreed not to leave the property for the final 2 days. No last-minute supply runs. No unnecessary exposure. Everything we needed was already here. Today was organization day. When we had hauled supplies down earlier, it had been fast and strategic. Stack first, sort later. Now, Irene Bishop and I moved methodically. Water section, dry goods, medical inventory, fuel storage, emergency kits. The basement was no longer a storage room. It was a controlled survival system. We had left only enough space for movement, sleeping, and cooking. Every other inch was utilized. Days earlier, I had filled every water tank we owned. I built a layered gravity-fed filtration unit, sand, charcoal, fine mesh, chemical backup purification tablets. In my first life, water contamination happened fast. Faster than infection spread in some areas. This time, we would not drink poison. Daniel Bishop used leftover materials to reinforce the perimeter one final time. He embedded hidden iron spikes in the soil along the outer wall, shallow enough to wound, deep enough to cripple. From a distance, the ground looked untouched. Up close, it was a trap. Finally, we parked the cargo truck directly behind the main gate inside the yard. If someone rammed it from outside, they would meet 3 tons of steel. July 4th night, we went to bed early. I had survived 15 days in my first life. That was all. I had no idea how long this collapse would last. Months? Years? Forever? And yet, lying in my childhood bedroom, I felt something I hadn't felt before the first collapse. Control. This time, I had my parents beside me. This time, Lauren Bishop had prepared. That was enough. July 5th. I woke early. Instead of panic, I scrolled. Short videos, news clips, rumors. Then one video froze my hand mid-scroll. A man thrashing violently, foaming, snarling. Even restrained by medical staff, he lunged for anyone within reach. I zoomed in. His eyes. Blood vessels ruptured. Jaw tension abnormal. Motor control deteriorating. Not full transformation. Early stage infection. I didn't bother putting on shoes. I grabbed my phone and ran.
Dad. Mom. It started?
They went silent. Even now, part of them still doubted. Zombies sounded absurd. Rebirth sounded impossible. But the preparations were real. The reinforced doors were real. The stocked basement was real.
Whatever this is,
Daniel Bishop said calmly.
we're together. That's what matters.
He didn't mock me. He didn't dismiss it. He chose unity. I hugged my mother.
Mom, we've got enough supplies. We'll be fine.
She nodded, still trying to reconcile reality. Then she did something extraordinary. She went to make breakfast. Seafood porridge. Steamed buns. The smell filled the house like nothing was wrong. Like the world wasn't cracking open. While eating, I kept scrolling. The infection spread faster than predicted. Trending topics were exploding. I clicked another video. A woman clinging to a man's neck. Biting. Tearing. If this were normal times, it would look like assault. But it wasn't assault. It was consumption. My parents glanced once at the screen and instantly lost their appetite. The woman ripped the man open. I had seen worse in my first life. In my apartment. From my window. Starving while watching society disintegrate. I kept eating. Immunity isn't emotional. It's experiential. After breakfast, we held a short family meeting.
These infected are extremely sensitive to sound.
I said,
Smell, too. Especially blood. Only complete cranial destruction stops them.
Daniel Bishop absorbed every word. Rotation. He said,
Lauren and I monitor surveillance in shifts. Irene handles logistics and food.
We all agreed. Our village was remote. Infected would take time to reach us. But humans wouldn't. That part I didn't say out loud. The meeting ended. My father headed to the basement surveillance station. I sat in the living room, pretending to scroll casually. Then I saw him. Bryce Tanner. On a live stream someone nearby had posted. He stood outside Miller's grocery in town. Laughing. Shouting. Holding a baseball bat. Smashing the glass doors while others filmed. Bryce Tanner had always been small-town trash with big city ego. Petty theft. Street intimidation. Loud. Cruel when backed by numbers. In my first life, he was one of the first to turn looter. And one of the first to die. This time, he looked energized. Excited. Chaos was oxygen to men like him. The video cut. Another post popped up minutes later. Bryce Tanner and 3 others loading supplies into a stolen pickup. No fear. No hesitation. No understanding of what was coming. Then something else caught my eye in the background. A familiar silhouette. Garrett Knox. Watching. Not participating. Observing. Calculating. That man never rushed. In my first life, he didn't loot on day 1. He waited. He mapped who had food. Who had land. Who had generators. Who had weak fences. Garrett Knox was not a rioter. He was a predator. And predators study before they strike. A sudden metallic clang echoed outside our house. Not loud, but deliberate. I froze. Phone down. Breathing steady. From the basement speaker system, Daniel Bishop's voice came through calmly.
Lauren.
I see it.
I replied. Camera 3. Outer perimeter. Bryce Tanner. Standing outside our gate. Testing it with his boot. Smirking. He wasn't alone. 2 others behind him. They weren't attacking. Not yet. They were probing. Bryce Tanner leaned closer to the gate bars and shouted,
Hey, Bishop. Y'all hiding in there.
Daniel Bishop remained silent downstairs. I remained seated on the couch. Controlled. Bryce kicked the gate again.
Bet you stocked up, huh? Share with the neighborhood.
He laughed. I stood up slowly. Walked to the reinforced front door. Did not open it. I spoke through the intercom speaker instead.
Bryce Tanner.
Silence. He hadn't expected a response.
I can see you clearly.
I continued calmly.
You're on 3 separate cameras.
He glanced around instinctively. Predators hate realizing they're visible.
You and your friends should leave.
He tried to recover his swagger.
Or what?
I let a second pass.
Or next time you step forward, you won't step back.
No yelling. No anger. Just certainty. Bryce Tanner hesitated. Behind him, one of his friends shifted nervously. They weren't ready. Not today. He spat on the ground and backed away.
This ain't over, Lauren Bishop.
I smiled faintly behind steel and reinforced glass.
I know.
I whispered. From the basement monitor feed, Daniel Bishop's voice came again.
You okay?
Yes.
Because the difference between this life and the last was simple. Last time, I was prey. This time, I was ready. And somewhere out there, something stronger than Bryce, smarter than Garrett, was beginning to move. They would later call it the Warden. But on July 5th, it hadn't reached us yet. And neither had death. Not this time. 15 days after the outbreak, utilities were still running. Water flowed. Electricity hummed. Streetlights flickered on at night like the world was pretending nothing had changed. That alone made this life different from the last. In my first life, infrastructure collapsed fast. Too fast. This time, I analyzed instead of panicking. Our village was remote. The infection had detonated in major cities first. Urban density accelerated spread. Rural isolation delayed it. Transmission follows population. And we were inconveniently small. Most families here were my parents' generation. Farmers. Orchard owners. People who stored grain because that's what they had always done. Food wasn't something they ordered. It was something they grew. Which meant, unlike cities, hunger wouldn't arrive in the first month. For a while, that illusion of safety felt real. Then it shattered. Day 20. The engine roared before we saw him. A motorcycle tearing down the main road toward the village center. The noise alone was a death wish. Behind him, a wave. Not large, but enough. Infected, drawn by vibration, stumbling after him in chaotic pursuit. I zoomed in through the perimeter camera feed. It was him. Chin Shou, the so-called ghost rider of our village. Fresh out of juvenile detention last month. Reckless. Ego-driven. Addicted to attention. He had always mistaken noise for power. Now noise was currency for death. His arrival destabilized everything. Not only because he dragged infected behind him, but because his parents worked out of province. No stable food source at home. No discipline. No structure. Which meant when his supplies ran out, he would look outward. And villages do not fall to zombies first. They fall to desperation. I wasn't a saint. If Chin Shou came for Lauren Bishop's family, I would end him without hesitation. I was calculating trajectories in my head when Daniel Bishop approached.
Lauren. What is it?
Chin Shou's back. Motorcycle. Brought infected with him.
I explained the risk clearly. Not emotionally, strategically. Irene Bishop paled. But Daniel Bishop remained steady.
We watch the feeds. We respond fast.
He trusted the system. Because we built it right. From that day forward, monitoring intensified. Shift rotations tighter. Sound discipline stricter. My mother reorganized the interior daily, not because it needed it, but because routine maintains sanity. She also planted vegetables in reinforced planter beds. We had eaten through our leafy greens. Sustainability now mattered. Day 40. Utilities finally failed. Water stopped first. Then electricity. Silence spread across power lines. The village response was calm. Most households had wells, stored grain, preserved vegetables. The old ways survived longer than modern ones. Our home had no well, but I had planned for that. Water reserves were stable. Solar batteries remained above 70% capacity. Energy cycling was controlled. Consumption rationed. We lost nothing essential. Outside, infected numbers remained low. The few Chinsho had dragged in lingered near the road edges. Occasionally, new strays wandered through. Slow. Uncoordinated. Some leaned against walls like exhausted drunks. In my first life, I had never had the luxury to observe them this long. Now I studied. Their gait was deteriorating. Muscle decay visible. Some showed irregular movement patterns. Not mindless. Not entirely. Interesting. When Daniel Bishop handled monitor duty, I often climbed upstairs with binoculars, watching patterns, predicting movement. If someone malicious entered this village right now, the infected would not stop them. That was a problem. Weak deterrents invite predators. Day 55. The illusion ended. Camera 6 picked up movement at Chinsho's house. Door opening. Agitated pacing. He had burned through his supplies. Predictable. He stepped outside. Paused. Surveyed. Then mounted the motorcycle again. The engine ignited. And with it, a death beacon. Several infected turned immediately toward the sound. He dispatched the closest few quickly. Crude, but effective. Then he accelerated toward Uncle Lee's property. Uncle Lee and his wife were elderly. Their wall barely 2 meters high. To a young man like Chinsho, it was a suggestion, not a barrier. He vaulted over, disappeared inside. I zoomed closer. Elderly bodies do not move fast under stress. They would not win that confrontation. Daniel Bishop saw it too.
Do we intervene?
He asked. Yes. But not directly. I deployed one of our drones. Silent lift. High arc. Controlled descent. I guided it behind a cluster of infected and pulsed directional sound from the drone's speaker, low-frequency agitation. Just enough. The infected shifted. Redirected. Toward Uncle Lee's gate. Within minutes, pressure mounted outside. Chinsho reappeared at the courtyard entrance, scanning. He saw the growing infected cluster. His expression changed. Calculation replacing arrogance. He ordered the 2 elderly residents to help barricade the gate. Heavy objects dragged into position. He wasn't leaving with stolen food now. He was trapped managing a perimeter problem. Then his eyes lifted. He saw the drone. Hovering. Watching. He stared at it for several seconds. Thinking. Noticing. That was dangerous. I could not allow him to triangulate its origin. So I lowered the drone onto a tree branch near Uncle Lee's entrance. Powered it down. Waited. When night fell, I reactivated it and routed it back home using a wide arc path to avoid line-of-sight tracing. Back into the basement charging station. Energy levels stable. No one saw it return. Daniel Bishop looked at me quietly.
You just forced him to defend. instead of steel.
Yes.
Irene Bishop exhaled slowly. The house remained silent. But the rules had shifted. Chin Shou now knew someone in this village had surveillance, intelligence, control. And somewhere beyond our perimeter, Garrett Knox was watching regional supply shifts, mapping weak points. He would hear about food shortages, about movement, about opportunity, and deeper still, among the slow, starving infected, something else was adapting. On camera 11 that night, I replayed footage of one infected standing unnaturally still for over 3 hours. Not swaying, not collapsing, just watching. In my first life, I died before I could learn its pattern. They would later name it the Warden. This time, if it stepped into my village, it would find we were not livestock. We were fortified. And I was no longer afraid of escalation. Because so many infected had gathered outside Chin Shou's gate, he couldn't leave. That bought the entire village breathing room. And it bought my family stability. For a short while, things almost felt structured. Daniel Bishop rode the generator bicycle I had purchased weeks ago. Steady rhythm. Measured breathing. Power output climbing on the basement monitor. Exercise and electricity. Efficient, quiet, controlled. Irene Bishop tended to her vegetable beds with the calm precision of someone who had grown food her entire life. Under her care, the crops thrived. Green onions, chives, leafy stems pushing upward like defiance against collapse. As for me, when I wasn't piloting drones over the village perimeter, I sat beside my mother watching downloaded palace dramas on low volume. Ironically, fictional court politics felt peaceful compared to real survival. One evening, my mother smiled faintly and said,
Let's make chive pockets tonight. These grow faster than we can eat them. I grinned immediately.
That's perfect. We haven't had those in forever.
Irene Bishop was more than a farmer. She was an artist in the kitchen. That night, the smell of pan-fried chive pockets filled our fortified home. Crisp edges. Soft interior. For a moment, the apocalypse paused at our walls. But something in the air felt different. Heavier? More aware. For several days, I sensed a shift in the village atmosphere. Not visible at first. Just wrong. So I increased surveillance frequency. Expanded drone range. Mapped movement patterns more aggressively. That's when I saw it. A teenage infected wearing a faded athletic jacket. At first glance, it looked like the others. Slow. Unsteady. But it wasn't. It stopped when others moved. Turned its head with precision. Watched before reacting. Then I saw it gesture. A subtle motion. Two nearby infected adjusted direction in response. I replayed the footage 3 times. There was no mistake. It wasn't wandering. It was directing.
Dad. Mom.
I didn't raise my voice.
They're evolving.
Daniel Bishop's brow tightened into a hard line. Irene Bishop went quiet. From that day forward, that infected had a name in my mind. The Warden. Because it wasn't hunting blindly. It was managing territory.
We monitor it,
Daniel Bishop said firmly.
but we do not reveal ourselves.
Agreed. Intelligence gathering only. No exposure. Day 70. The real predators arrived. We heard them before we saw them. Engines. Modified. Loud. Deliberately loud. Vehicles reinforced with welded steel plating. Spikes mounted on bumpers. 3 men. 2 women. Armed. Disciplined posture. They weren't panicked survivors. They were organized. They cut through the outer road, drawing infected in droves behind them. But unlike Qin Shou, they controlled the chaos. 2 stepped out first and eliminated trailing infected with clean, efficient gunfire. Minimal wasted ammunition. Professional. Then they rammed through the gate of a nearby property. Uncle Lee's house. The same one Qin Shou had invaded weeks earlier. Through the surveillance feed, I watched everything. Qin Shou was dragged into the courtyard. Kneeling. Begging. Offering allegiance. Pathetic. Uncle Lee and his wife were thrown outward. Not shot. Not spared. Thrown. Into the infected. Their screams didn't last long. Irene Bishop turned away from the screen. Daniel Bishop clenched his jaw but said nothing. I kept watching. You don't look away from threats. You study them. Over the next few days, the group swept through the village. Confiscating supplies. Recruiting the fearful. Feeding the resistant to the infected. Systematic. Efficient. Then I saw him clearly for the first time. Garrett Knox. Standing beside the lead vehicle. Arms folded. Observing everything. He hadn't been with Bryce Tanner earlier in the collapse by accident. Garrett Knox doesn't rush into chaos. He builds inside it. Bryce Tanner was muscle. Garrett Knox was command. And now he had structure. Eventually, they reached our property. But we had already transitioned. The moment their vehicles entered the village days ago, we activated full concealment protocol. House staged to appear abandoned. Curtains dusty. Exterior quiet. Basement sealed. Thermal signature minimized. They stopped outside our gate. Garrett Knox studied it slowly.
This gate's reinforced, he said.
One of his men muttered.
Means there's something worth protecting.
Another added.
But breaking in won't be easy.
Garrett Knox didn't hesitate. He ordered the vehicle forward. They attempted a forced breach. The tires hit the concealed metal spikes my father had buried. Not enough to blow them out. Enough to destabilize control. They rammed the gate. Once. Twice. It didn't move. Because Daniel Bishop builds things that endure. The impact noise echoed through the village. And with it, infected began converging. Including the warden. I watched the evolved infected step into frame. Not rushing. Assessing. Garrett Knox noticed it too. He recalculated instantly. Anger flashed across his face. He grabbed one of the newly recruited villagers and shoved him toward the growing infected mass. Screams. Gunfire. Engine ignition. They retreated fast, leaving chaos behind. From the basement, we listened to the distant tearing sounds. Irene Bishop's voice trembled with anger.
How can people do that? Throw living people to monsters?
I placed my hand gently over hers.
Mom,
I said quietly.
people like Garrett Knox don't believe in monsters. They believe in leverage.
But inside, something colder settled. Because I had seen the way Garrett Knox looked at our gate. Not frustrated. Interested. He would be back. And next time, he wouldn't test. He would plan. Above ground, the warden stood still for a long time after the vehicles left, watching our house. Not attacking. Just observing. It didn't move like the others. It didn't decay like the others. And for the first time since rebirth, I felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. Not exactly. Recognition. This collapse wasn't stagnating. It was evolving. Garrett Knox was evolving. The warden was evolving. And so was I. If they believed our house was a vault, they were right. But vaults don't just store resources. They store consequences. And the next time Garrett Knox stood outside my gate, he wouldn't leave as easily. At noon the next day, they came back. Bryce Tanner's crew rolled up like they owned the street, engines growling, boots thudding against asphalt that used to belong to decent people. One of his bulked-up idiots climbed onto the roof of their truck and scanned my house from above, shading his eyes as if he were some kind of battlefield commander instead of a scavenger with a stolen rifle. From the outside, our place looked abandoned. Curtains drawn. No smoke. No movement. He probably figured we'd already starved or fled. Maybe he assumed there wasn't much food left inside anyway. And he wasn't wrong about one thing: the front door. Reinforced steel core, triple deadbolts, custom frame. Even with tools, it wouldn't go down easily. I watched through the security feed, calm as ice. After 10 minutes of pacing and arguing, they made their decision. They gave up. Not because they were merciful, because they were lazy. But before leaving, Bryce couldn't resist one last act of spite. He grabbed his rifle, aimed upward, and fired. The shot cracked through the air. My rooftop solar panels shattered in a spray of glass and silicon. I didn't flinch. Let him have his little tantrum. What Bryce didn't know was that weeks before the grid failed, I'd purchased a pedal-powered generator bike. While the world collapsed, my father, Daniel Bishop, had been riding it every morning in the basement, disciplined as ever. The battery banks were already stocked with reserve power. Destroying my panels didn't cripple us. It just told me exactly who Bryce Tanner was. And that made the next decision easier. Still, their presence in town unsettled me. Garrett Knox and his wider raider network were bad enough, but Bryce's crew was chaotic, impulsive, dangerous in a stupid way. Stupid men escalate. I decided we would not wait for escalation. We would control it. I launched the drone again. The aerial feed showed something new. More zombies moving through the outskirts. Not wandering randomly. Flowing inward. Then I saw him. The warden. The evolved one. Taller. Broader. Movements deliberate. Not the twitching chaos of the others. He wasn't just surviving, he was directing. And behind him trailed a growing cluster of ordinary infected. He had brought them in from beyond the tree line. A mobile weapon. A thought formed in my mind, sharp and clean. I went downstairs and found my father.
Dad,
I said.
what if we let them fight each other?
Daniel Bishop didn't hesitate. He understood strategy. He always had. When the drone returned, I tied a slab of thawed raw meat beneath it, heavy enough to drip scent, light enough for lift. Then I sent it back out, low and slow. The warden noticed immediately. His head snapped upward. His posture changed. He didn't chase blindly. He signaled. And the smaller zombies followed. I guided the drone carefully, just within reach, never too fast. Leading them through side streets, around corners, past abandoned homes, until I hovered over Bryce Tanner's temporary hideout. Then I lowered it. The scent thickened in the air. The warden stopped directly in front of their house. I pulled the drone back at the last second. The first wave hit their barricades less than a minute later. I didn't stop there. I repeated the run. Twice. 3 times. Each pass bringing more infected into the area. Soon, Bryce's stolen stronghold was surrounded. The moans became a roar. Inside, I saw chaos through a cracked upstairs window. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the interior walls. They fought hard, I'll give them that. But they weren't fighting people. They were fighting hunger. And hunger doesn't negotiate. One of Bryce's men, young, shaking, panicked. I saw him fumble through a military crate. They'd stolen from an abandoned National Guard outpost weeks ago. I recognized the stenciled markings. He pulled out a grenade. Bryce screamed something, probably too late. The grenade arced through the broken doorway. The explosion was monstrous. It tore through the front yard, obliterating half the infected instantly. But the blast radius didn't care about loyalty. The house collapsed inward. Fire bloomed. Bodies, living and dead, were thrown into the street. When the smoke cleared, Bryce Tanner was gone. So was the warden. They destroyed each other. Exactly as planned. By evening, the town was silent again. No engines. No shouting. No organized predators. Just wind. We moved back upstairs the next morning. Life resumed its rhythm, me managing perimeter scans, my father maintaining power systems, my mother, Irene Bishop, keeping the house feeling human. Days blurred. Weeks, maybe. Time stretched thin in the apocalypse. Without calendars, survival becomes the only clock. Then one afternoon, while my mom and I were folding dumplings at the kitchen table, because even in the end of the world, you cook when you can, the old radio crackled. Static hissed. Then a voice cut through.
Citizens across the nation, our armed forces are actively clearing infected zones. Do not lose hope. The United States government has not abandoned you. Rescue operations are underway.
The signal wavered, but the message was clear. Military. Organized resistance. Hope? My mother froze. Then she started crying. Not hysterical. Relieved. I didn't realize I was crying too until my vision blurred. I ran to the basement.
Dad? They're pushing back. The army's fighting.
Daniel Bishop looked up from the generator console, and for the first time in months, I saw something different in his eyes. Not vigilance. Not calculation. Hope. That day, our whole family allowed ourselves to feel it. After endless months of decay and blood and smoke, we finally saw a crack of light on the horizon. And this time, it wasn't fire. The radio signal kept repeating for a few more seconds before dissolving into static. I didn't move at first. Hope was dangerous. Hope made people careless. I looked at Daniel Bishop. My father's eyes were shining, but his jaw was still tight, the way it always was when he was calculating risks instead of celebrating victories. Irene Bishop pressed a hand to her chest, tears in her eyes, whispering thank you under her breath. I let them have that moment. But I didn't power down the surveillance grid. I didn't shut off the drone network. I didn't unlock a single reinforced door. If the military was truly sweeping the country, they would eventually reach this town. And when they did, they wouldn't find desperate survivors waving white flags. They would find a fortified property. They would find layered defenses. They would find solar backups, kinetic power reserves, food storage inventories mapped to the gram. They would find the Bishop family, alive, because we chose preparation over panic. 70 days into the apocalypse, I had learned something simple. Rescue is a bonus. Control is survival. If soldiers arrived, I would verify their insignia myself. If evacuation was offered, I would evaluate their supply chain before stepping outside my gate. And if this broadcast turned out to be false hope, bait for the careless, then whoever thought they could flush us out would learn the same lesson Garrett Knox did. I walked back upstairs, the afternoon sunlight spilling across the floor. Outside the village, the dead were quieter now. Inside our home, every system hummed steadily. The world might be rebuilding, but I wasn't surrendering command. Not today. Not ever.